right. Thank you guys so much for coming this morning. I know that it was probably a lot for you all to get up early this morning on a Saturday, but thanks for being here. I appreciate it. So I've had a little bit of a twisty-turny journey into medicine, but I think that it has allowed me to be a better doctor today. I think that essentially my love of being an athlete as a kid then translated to a better understanding of what you all are going through. I then was able to be a coach for a little while and a parent now of an active kid, so I understand the pressures of what the parents and coaches might be dealing with a little bit with this. So thank you again for coming in and visiting us. All right, I have no disclosures. We're going to go through just a couple of objectives. So this is kind of framing the talk for us a little bit as we go. So we'll talk about the benefits of sport, okay? And then we'll talk a little bit about why youth athlete anatomy is a little bit different than the anatomy of me or someone else who is quote unquote fully developed. Kind of year 20 and above is a good way to think about it. We'll talk a little bit about some statistics, and we'll talk about what are the costs that we have if we do the thing that we love too much. And then we're going to talk about some hard-hitting points to try and take a couple of pearls home with you. Because I'm going to talk a lot, but my hope is that you can take a few pieces of information and put them in your pocket so that you can do what you can on the way back. All right. So I would first thing I'm going to ask you to do is I want to know my audience just a little bit. How many youth athletes do we have in here? Okay. All right. You guys are kind of young. What? I mean, no?
I quit like a week ago.
A week ago. Oh, this talk is going to be great. All right. Okay, and who are our parents in the room? Oh, we have a very young parent. We might have to have another talk after this one. Okay, and then any coaches in the room today? Awesome. Thank you so much, everybody, for coming. All right. So I loved to play sports. I love to play sports even now. And this is me kind of at the last time when I was like really, really good. So this was at one of the national regattas in Dadvale, and I was very proud of my little team of scrappy rowers because we were able to kind of beat a lot of the Ivy League teams and get up on the podium, and it was really special. It felt so good. But I'm the goofball and the visor. I always rode with a hat, and now I feel good about that choice because I have fewer like old lady spots on my face. It was a good call. All right, so I'm going to ask for 3 youth athletes, or maybe even like from a week and a half ago. I'd like for 3 of our youth athletes to tell me why you play. I loved to play because it calmed me down for the rest of my life, and I loved being with my friends doing the thing that I thought was fun. That's part of the reason why I played. Do we have 3 youth athletes who might be able to volunteer and tell me why you play or played? I'm just going to call you out if you don't talk. All right, our parents and our youngest youth athlete here in the room, would you tell me what is one of your sports and why do you play?
Mountain biking, and he meets me.
Okay. There you go. What's a benefit that you get from playing?
I have buff legs.
Heck yeah. Buff legs are important. Those will get you far in life sometimes. All right. Do I have a volunteer or do I get to call people out? Anybody else want to share? Yeah. What's your name?
Eliza.
Eliza.
I do track, cross country, and jump rope.
Awesome.
I like how it's like a team sport, like both a team sport, and you like both you're like kind of like family, like you're supporting each other and growing each other.
Yeah. So Eliza is track and field. She finds that she likes the team aspect of it. It feels like a family. And then what was the last thing that you said?
Like you work hard together.
Yeah. It's a team thing. You're going together to accomplish a goal. I love it. All right, one more athlete. Oh, you know I'm going to call you out. Let's call it your friend. I'll bug you later, unless you want to share. Do you want to share? Okay. Did you play before?
Before.
Okay, great. Did you have a sport or sports that you loved?
Yeah, I did cheer, and then I did gymnastics before. And
Cheer and gymnastics. Sorry, I'm just sharing with the audience here.
and I just really liked, it was challenging. I really liked setting goals and then getting the goals.
Cool. Yeah. All right. So setting goals and then working towards the goals as part of what she found to be enjoyable about her sports. I think one of the biggest benefits that you can get is a sense of enjoyment, a sense of accomplishment, a sense of if I work hard, I can improve. And I think that's an incredible lesson to take throughout your lifetime. So what can we stand to lose when we start to fizzle? We might see that our mental health is suffering. Maybe our academic performance is suffering. We might see that we're not as strong as we used to be. We might notice that we're having a little bit harder time managing stress. Maybe our support team around us, our teammates that we were talking about, we lose those, and they can be really good friends. I'm still in a group text with my high school track and cross country teams 30 years later. We can lose some of our confidence when we give up one of the things that we used to find a lot of love in. When we are kind of between the ages of 10 and 25, all of that strength training that we do, it helps us to build our bones for a lifetime. And so we can lose some of that. But essentially, man, there is a lot to lose when we have to give up one of the things that we have found joy in. I'd like for you to understand a little bit about youth bodies that essentially makes their bodies different than my body, say. So youth bodies, they're growing. That's like their whole job, is they got to get big. And so my body, I am going to ask you, Dr. Seeley, let's say that we go out and we have a race with my 11-year-old kiddo. He's not that fast. We might even win. So if we had a 100-meter dash and then one of us got hurt and we grabbed our leg like this, what happened? What happened when we were sprinting and then we grabbed our leg like this? What would that injury be called?
That's funny you ask. I have some recent experience.
Oh, no.
That looks like a hamstring strain.
Yeah, so pulled a hammy. You'll see this sometimes in our Olympians. You'll see it sometimes on the football field of our pro and college athletes. What's different is that in a pediatric athlete, they are more likely to have trouble with their bones. So where the muscle then turns into tendon and then attaches to the bone, that growth plate at the end of that bone is the weakest spot. It's kind of absurd to think that your bones are weaker than the rest of your body, but it's true as a growing person because there's so much cell turnover happening in that area. It is essentially weaker, and it's more likely to have something like this cool little avulsion fracture that this poor athlete has. If anybody loves x-rays, it took me a hot second to figure out what that was in there. And I think it is like the ends of the laces from like a drawstring. So that's what that really funny part of the graphic is. But if you look right here, you can see that there's a little piece of sliver that has come off of the bone. If you stick your hand underneath your bottom, there's like a little pointy thing. That's why I'm telling you to do. I appreciate that you were following my instruction. Thank you for being a good audience member. If you stick your hand underneath your bottom, you can feel a little sharp bone right there. So in kids, that is the most common pelvic injury that I see. I have all the time kids come into my office and they're like, oh, I pulled my hamstring. I've been in physical therapy for like 2 months and I'm not getting better. I don't know what's wrong. And I'm like, oh, this one's going to be an easy one. All right, great. And it's because they've essentially yanked off their bone because their muscles are relatively stronger than their bones are at this point. All right, so that's your growth plate. It's a very strong spot of vulnerability for a young athlete. Okay, your growing bones are a little bit less tolerant of that stress. We're at increased risk for stress injuries. And then we have this like muscle-bone imbalance because our job is to grow when we're a youth athlete. And what happens is those muscles, they get really, really tight, and they're not as strong, and they won't be as strong until you just stop this whole growing thing, which isn't going to happen for another couple of years. And so it's really hard for those youth bodies to sort of keep up. We know that the growth plates are at really high risk. We see this in our young pitchers on the inside of their elbows. We see it all the time in our soccer players, our runners, in the pelvis. That's a really high area for those growth plate injuries. And I bet if we took a survey of even people in this room, somebody in here, probably even like 20% of the people in here, had something called Osgood-Schlatter, where you basically have this little spot, this little knobby knob on the front of your knee. That is where one of your growth plates are. And because you are such an amazing jumper or such an amazing runner, that you got a little bit of pulling at that site, and then you had big pain for a long time. And it got better eventually, almost in everybody. But it's one of those things that this is a chronic thing. And even if you don't think you know about growth injuries, most likely you know about growth injuries simply because you have been there before. All right, so if we think about the fact that those muscles are having to stretch as those bones grow, we also know that they're not going to be as strong as they need to be to help support those young bodies. And so it takes a couple of years to play catch up as you rebuild that strength relative to the rest of your body. All right, Dr. Seeley, I feel like we're kindred spirits. I think you might like this slide a little bit. So this is something that I want you to pay attention to. As a young athlete, as a young person, there is all kinds of junk on the internet. There are all kinds of experts who have decided that they know something about something, and so they're going to talk to you about it on TikTok. They're going to talk to you about it on YouTube Shorts. I had this conversation with my 11-year-old earlier this week. This is one of those things that just because it's on the internet doesn't mean that it's true. You need to investigate your sources. You need to figure out, is this stuff real that they're talking about? Do they have any business talking about it at all? You need to look for, do they have training in whatever it is that they're talking about? Do they have experience? Just because someone is really, really, really strong doesn't mean that they are a really, really, really amazing expert in powerlifting. It might just mean that they have the genetics to make them bigger and they have worked in the gym a lot. It doesn't make them an expert, okay? So I want you to always think about when you're evaluating things on the internet that you're reading, maybe it's about nutrition, maybe it's about running mechanics. I want you to think about, do these people have any business telling me what they're talking about? So basically, this is a joke. This is Abe Lincoln. I have to clarify that it's a joke because I don't want you to think that this is real at all, since this is a talk where I'm supposed to be teaching you things. 19.64% of statistics on the web are made up. That's why I always verify sources, says Abraham Lincoln. All right, so here's just a couple of statistics, and we just go through this so that it forms kind of the background for why I care about this. So youth athletes, there's some mixed numbers on this, and I was looking at good resources for this. I was looking at some of kind of the national surveys that we have. I was looking at some of the resources that Dr. Seeley was quoting, and there's a little bit of kind of mixed information about exactly how many people are playing, and it is because the way that they gather that data is a little bit different. But essentially, up to 60 million kids are participating in sports. That is from a 2022 survey on children's health. And in the USA, we're looking at about 53.8% of youth are involved in sports. And then in Utah, a little bit higher. Good job, Utah, 60.5%. We could do better. The reason why I care is because we know that if we're a little bit more active when we're younger and we maintain that activity, then we're going to be a little bit more active when we're adults. And then it's going to be better in 1,000,005 different ways. Okay? It's good for our bodies. It's good for our brains. It's good for health in general. Okay? And then in terms of statistics for overuse injuries, we're basically looking at about 50% of all of our athletic injuries are going to be overuse injuries. Holy cow. And we know that a good portion of those overuse injuries are preventable. man alive, if we could work on preventing some of these injuries, that would be absolutely incredible, because then everybody gets to play. Nobody has to be sat on the bench. This is great. So it's not your ACLs. It's not your broken bones that are benching people for many months of the time. Those aren't your most common reasons. It's because we're doing too much and not resting enough is usually the reason why we have injured folks. All right. So our greatest risk of overtraining, those are really going to be in our year-round athletes. And so what I'll often see in my clinic is I see a little bit higher percentage of gymnasts. I see a little bit higher percentage of folks who are playing comp basketball year-round, comp baseball year-round. I see, oh, Lordy, do I see a lot of drill. It's the folks who really don't have breaks and intentional breaks put in place so that they can have that time for rest and recovery. The other time that we see those overuse injuries is going to be during those really heavy ramp-up times. So at the beginning of cross-country season, when folks are adding on mileage a little bit too quickly, we'll see that. And then I'm not going to go super deep into this, because that is another 1 to 3 lectures at least. But we know that sports specialization ties into injury rates. And the reason why is it's a little bit fuzzy, essentially, if it is the sports specialization itself that increases your risk of injury, but it's actually more that we know that our sports specialists, they're spending a lot more time. They're doing that sport for way longer. So up to 2 times as many hours per week in our sports specialists compared to our multi-sport athletes. Wow, that's a pretty big difference, okay? And so we really can recognize that one of the main points that I'll ask you to get out of this talk is it's the volume that we're doing that is placing us at the highest risk, okay? So if we can reduce that volume, take a little bit more time to be a little bit more well-rounded person with some other things, that's going to be the best thing that we can do. Let's define what in the world burnout is, okay? It's a spectrum. It typically is going to include physical exhaustion and or emotional exhaustion. You're going to have a reduced sense of accomplishment, and you're going to start to think that, maybe this thing that I loved so much, that brought me so much joy, just really isn't as good as it once was. So what does burnout actually look like in a youth athlete? There's a lot of carryover in terms of what burnout looks like and some mental health presentations that we might have. We'll see that maybe there's some weight fluctuations. We don't like what we're doing as much anymore with sport. We're not as motivated to go to practice anymore or do kind of all the extra things that really drove us previously. We might not be doing quite as well in school, not sleeping as well. We're more worried than we used to be. We're pooped all the time, feeling a little bit worn out and sad. All of these things can be presentations of what burnout can look like in a kid. And so one of the things that I also want to focus on today is checking in with each other, checking in with your kids, checking in with your athletes, teammates, checking in on each other to make sure everybody's doing okay if you notice that something's off. Because if something's off, we got to take care of each other. All right, this is a good slide. If you're going to take a picture of things in this presentation, this is a decent one to take a picture of, okay? So we've got your risk factors, and then kind of on the positive side, we've got your preventative and your protective aspects. What can we do to help support our kids? What can we do to help us individually? What can we do to help our athletes on our team who we're coaching? So things that place us at high risk of having burnout and leading towards those overuse issues, maybe there's a lot of pressure from the outside to be amazing. Maybe our parents, we feel like, they're only going to love us if we're doing, if we're getting podiums every time. Maybe we're feeling just intense heat from our coach that we really have to perform, we have to win, so that then we can take the next step. Perfectionist tendencies, I have those big time, so keep those in check. If you see those in your kid, if you see those in your athletes, remember that the goal is not to win, the goal is to play, and the goal is to do their very best, to play at their highest level, not to win. not to smash everybody else, but to do the very best that they can to help them develop that internal sense of drive and that internal sense of confidence and accomplishment. If there's a focus on performance outcomes, if they're absolutely overscheduled to death, that's something that we're trying to work on in our own household. How do we manage all of this stuff? How do we not put, too much pressure on this certain sport that's asking a lot? And how do I allow them to participate in other sports too? Oh gosh, I want them to make sure that they're a well-rounded person. And then those high chronic training loads, if we're working too hard for too long, it becomes too much and you'll want to let go because you're trying to help protect yourself. So what's protective? Supportive parents, supportive coaches, those intrinsic skills. We talk about tools in your mental health toolbox, developing your own sense of accomplishment, developing your own sense of optimism. I'm looking forward to this. I feel like I have control over my own training load. I feel like I have a little bit of control over what tournaments that we go to or how much I'm going to do this week. I'm getting enough sleep. I'm getting enough rest from the sport. And then also thinking about your own personal goals as an athlete. Are you able to set those goals, or is somebody else controlling everything for you? Okay, costs of doing too much of the thing that you love. Injury is huge. It's going to impact your performance. You're going to feel kind of yucky on the inside. Your mental health will really suffer. You might lose some of the other social impacts. You're going to lose a lot of those other cool kid things that you get to do. Dances, participate in music, maybe you're in a play, like all these other things that you're supposed to get to experience as a child growing up, just experiencing lots of different things with life. Those go away when you're doing too much. And then the thing that breaks my heart so much, this kills me, 70% of youth athletes drop out of sport by age 13. 70%. So that means those folks are not getting to participate in sport kind of at the end of junior high and throughout high school. And then if we're not playing sports in high school, then we're not usually developing those habits to be an athlete or a sports participant over the lifetime. And then we're more likely to have kind of long-term issues with our health with that because we're not staying active. So if we can keep people in sports longer, the goal with sport should not necessarily be to be LeBron James. The goal with sport should be to have fun, okay? And to develop inner strength and to develop inner skills and to realize that you can build and get stronger with hard work. Okay, practical guidance time. All right. Are you a big sister to our young parent over here? Okay. Do you play any sports?
I do.
Okay. What sports do you like to play?
I also mountain bike and I like volleyball too.
Oh, very cool. That's awesome. I love that you've got two things that you like. That's great. How old are you, if I might ask?
I'm almost 16.
Almost 16. Okay. So the American Academy of Pediatrics, they've worked hard to kind of review lots of different data and try to come up with very easy guidelines to remember, okay? So part 1 is if you are 16 years old, you do not get to train more than 16 hours per week, okay? That's not necessarily that hard if you are a volleyball player. Usually, they get an hour and a half per day, something like that, 5 days a week, oftentimes. But it can be hard for our ballet dancers, for our gymnasts, for our drill folks. Sometimes even our runners can deal with this if they're doing longer events. But you essentially do not need to do more hours of training per week than your years of life, okay? We'll keep it simple. So a 9-year-old doesn't get to train 10 hours a week. A 9-year-old gets to train a max of 9 hours, okay? I'm 42, I think. So I wouldn't be able to train more than 42 hours per week. All right, very important things. I need you all to be taking at least 1, potentially 2 days off a week if you can, okay? The reason why is this is going to prevent burnout and it's going to reduce your risk of injury because we need that time to rest and recover. If you are somebody who you can maybe have that flexibility to take for sure that 1 day, and then if I can convince you on that second day off per week, go cross train. If you're playing volleyball, Go take the mountain bike out. Go play for a little bit on that mountain bike. If you're in drill, take one of those 2 days and then go do something fun. Go play basketball with your friends that day. Go on a hike. Go do something different because that's going to help build your skills, rest the muscles that you're overusing throughout the day. I want you to kind of think of doing a sport as factory work. We know that factory workers, they have a really high risk of kind of overuse injuries as well. It's just different. They're going to have carpal tunnel. They're going to have tennis elbow. They're going to struggle with lots of hand problems and elbow problems if we're doing factory work on an assembly line. You, as a youth athlete, if you're training too much, you are on the assembly line, and I need you to get off of work and go do something else for a little while to let those body parts rest. All right. When it comes to sleep, I heard a really great series of lectures at our national sports medicine competition just a few days ago. And something that I think we don't put enough emphasis on as a society is sleep and the value that it will provide for you. Yes, it's going to help prevent injuries a little, but what we've seen more is that it's going to help you from a mental health perspective, which will then help your performance as an athlete as well. Because we know folks who are struggling with mental health, we've gotten to see it in some of the folks we look up to most. Simone Biles in the Olympics not too long ago, I guess 2 Olympics ago now, she had to pull out because she was really struggling from a mental health perspective, and it was affecting her safety, right? So she needed to take more time off. I don't know if you noticed this or not, but she took some time off and then she came back and she killed it. So this is really, really important. Sleep is absolutely critical. It's going to help you from many different ways. We need to be getting 8 to 11 hours per night. We need to be putting those electronic devices away, not in the room. There should be no TVs, no electronic devices in your room, and you need to get it as dark as possible. If we can, we want to try and keep the same schedule each night. And that will help protect us. It'll help protect our mental health. Okay, from a nutrition perspective, this is another way that you can help feed your bodies to help fuel your performance. So we know that as an athlete, if you are under fueling, your body is then having to steal that fuel from all the stuff that you've worked so hard to build. So if you are not getting enough in, typically you're going to have to work hard to get 3 meals a day, potentially 2 snacks, maybe more, really focusing hard on extra calories during your seasons. If you're not doing that, your body will then take from your muscles, it will then steal from your bones, and you are then at a higher risk of injuries. A little bit tied into this, this is very important for our female athletes. When you have your very first period as a female, you have 2 years for your period to get its act together and to become regular and show up every single month. If it is not doing that, and it has been more than 2 years since your first period, something ain't right on the inside, okay? Usually, it is reflective that you are not getting enough nutrition, okay? And if your nutrition, if you tidy up that nutrition, if you talk to your pediatrician and you've checked in, maybe you've checked a couple of labs, maybe everything looks good as you've done that, meet with a sports nutritionist. They are incredible resources that you have, and almost guaranteed you're underfueling, and as you get those calories back in, that period's going to show back up and your performance will improve. So that is a very important point that I want you to take home from this. You are supposed to have at least 5 fruits and veggies a day, and a serving, if you look at your hand, go ahead and take a look at that. The palm of your hand is a serving of food generally, okay? So getting about that much of a fruit will count as 1, or that much of a vegetable will count as 1, and you need to get 5 of those. If you can make them different, that is even better, okay? All right, I like to talk about how we have this web in terms of youth sports. We've got our athletes, you have your teammates, you then have your parents and your coaches as well, who are helping to support you and lift you up through all of this time. And so I like to think of our coaches as sort of setting the vibe, setting the expectation for the team. Your coaches are setting the example for the team, typically. And then the teammates, they then kind of say, oh, well, this is how we're supposed to act. And the parents say, this is how we're supposed to act. And so then it becomes the expectation that this is the norm. And that really does oftentimes start with your coaches. And so if you are a coach, please recognize the enormous position of power that you have, and also the extreme gift that you are giving these kids by sharing your time, sharing your expertise, sharing your love of the sport. So thank you so much for that gift. And then think about the fact that the norms that you set for your team, it helps to set them up for success, or it places them at higher risk for injuries and burnout based on kind of the expectations that you give to your kiddos, okay? If these things are going on and you're noticing that things aren't appropriate, please speak up. Please be an advocate for yourself, for your teammates, for your children, for other folks on other teams. You know, make sure that we take care of each other. That's the whole reason why we're on this earth, is to try and take care of each other and do the right thing. If you feel like somebody is not quite feeling the way that they are supposed to, coaches and parents and teammates, notice it, speak up, take care of them. If they need to get help, get that help. One thing that I want you to hear from me is that every single one of us at some point in our lives need counseling, okay? Now, whether we seek it out and help take care of ourselves and take care of other people, that's another thing. But everyone in this room, everyone in the world is going to need counseling at some point. And so please know that that is normal and it is okay, and that it will only help you if you go seek out that care, or if you help someone take the next steps to go get that care. It will help them become not just a better athlete, but a better person. And then they'll be able to share what they've learned with other people. All right. We talked a little bit about coaches setting that vibe. It's really, really important to know as an athlete, it is not normal to hurt, okay? If you are experiencing a pain that does not go away in a few days, that's not normal. You need to tell someone. You need to get that checked out, because lots of times it's reflective of an overuse injury. Oftentimes those overuse injuries sneak up on you a little. There wasn't a certain event that happened where you hurt your knee or turned your ankle. It's something to where you're like, man, yeah, I've just been noticing that, like, after practice, my leg is really killing me. Or, you know, if I'm pitching, man, my elbow's really starting to hurt. I don't know what's going on. I didn't hurt it. It's just hurting. And so this is something that we've got to make sure that if you notice something, that you say something, okay? If you notice that a teammate is limping, check in with them. If you notice that somebody else's kid is limping, I don't know about you, I've got 3 kids, I've got a full-time job. I need other parents' help sometimes because I'm not going to be fully checked into everything at all times. So if you notice that somebody else is struggling, like, please say something to that parent so that they can be like, oh my gosh, yeah, I didn't even see that. Good point. Let's talk about it after practice. Taking time off is very, very important from a coach's perspective and setting that example. So we'll talk about that just a little bit more. Having 4 weeks off 2 times a year, extraordinarily protective for your athletes, okay? Really, really hard to do that with the pressures that we feel as athletes, with the pressures that we feel as parents, with the pressures that we feel as coaches to help maximize our athletes. But we've found that with adequate rest, we all do better. I often in clinic will try and sort of bargain a little bit with people and just say, hey, when was the last time that you had a break from your sport? And most of the time they'll be like, I think we went on vacation like for spring break, and then before that I think we had like maybe a week off for Christmas. I don't really remember before that. And so being deliberate as you think about that time off, and if you're a coach, oh my gosh, so much power. Set that example. We're going to take this amount of time off. We're going to take this many weeks off to try and get them a set of 4 weeks. And then we want to try and get that in twice a year. And so natural ways to do that in a year-round sport is essentially to say, all right, we're going to expand our break from spring break. We're going to take 2 weeks on the front end or 2 weeks on the back end. Or if it's something to where we've got, like in my kid's soccer team, I've had to really try and be an advocate for him and talk to the other parents about this and then loop the coach in as we go. But it's one of those things to where I've tried to say, okay, so I know that we're going to get 2 weeks off at Christmas time. Let's expand it on a week on the front end and a week on the back end, and then we've got our 4-week bulk time. And then we're gonna train throughout spring, and then we're gonna start training in the summer. And then I don't know about you guys, it gets absolutely unbearably hot here in like late July, early August. And so we kind of figured out that, you know what, from a safety perspective for a lot of our athletes, it's really not all that safe to be pushing that hard in 104-degree weather. And so why don't we go ahead and take that second month off during that time? Because there's usually a 1 or 2 week break then anyway. So we're just going to expand that a little bit so that we get our second month off. Yeah, go ahead.
Is the chunk of 4 important, or is it a week is okay here and a week is okay there versus
It's actually that chunk, because that really does allow those growth plates to settle down just a little bit and for stresses to be different on the body to recover. So they found that it's actually that consecutive string of 4. Some pediatricians will even say if you can take your 2 months consecutively, that's the best thing. I feel like that's too hard to ask, if I'm being really honest with you. And so they've kind of shifted a little bit. And I think that's the joy of being a pediatrician. You sort of have to work with people a little bit to try and figure out, okay, well, what's the best you can give me? All right. Okay, so key takeaways that I want you to pull from today. Number 1, too much of a good thing is still too much, okay? So working really hard to limit your hours according to your age, part 1. Part 2, 2 4-week hunks throughout the year, okay? If you want to do 3 4-week hunks, that's extra credit. That's awesome. We know that risk of over-injury goes down even more. It helps our athletes from a mental health perspective, from an adolescent perspective, from a social perspective, if we can give them adequate time off. Allowing them the opportunity to sleep, setting the example for everyone on your teams. So take a break, because too much places you at higher risk of injury. If you do too much, it is not guaranteed, but your risk of having an overuse injury and having a required 2 months off then is going to go way, 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 way up if you don't take those kind of 2 main precautions. And remember, 50% of our injuries in young athletes are overuse. That's a lot. And what if we could cut that down by half? All right, reduce that risk by taking a break. We've talked about those recommendations. We've talked about the importance of sleep every night, 8 to 11 hours, and trying to make sure that we keep a pretty regular sleep schedule. That's hard on tournament weekends, okay? Making sure that you are allowing those kids the chance to be a kid. They don't get another chance at this. Being a kid is a once-in-a-lifetime experience, and it's really, really special and precious. And so encourage them to make the most of it. And then finally, point 3, be there for each other. Keep your eyes open. If you see something that's not quite right, say something. Make sure that you're checking in with your teammates, with your kids, and with your athletes on your teams. Make sure that you're taking really good care of each other, because that's what we're supposed to do as people, okay? All right. I kind of have a lot of references listed here, but the one that I think is the most important, the American Academy of Pediatrics is really good about sort of distilling information down into a very readable document. And this one up here at the very top is just a great source. If you'll take a look at that, if you're kind of wanting to remember what we talked about today, that is such a good source to sort of review. All right, we'll go over a couple of questions and any discussion that you want to have. I think it would be great. A lot of the last one, it was a little bit more full, but a lot of our last discussions kind of surrounded around the fact that we have so many external pressures from this is the way that it's done in order to help your kids succeed. How do we buck that, knowing that this is the way that it's done to help your kids succeed, is actually not super safe for our kids? Like, how do we be that advocate? How do we stand up for people? How do we help them, protect themselves so that they can do this thing that they love for even longer? Yeah.
Of the 4-week break idea, cross-training, yes, good, even if they're similar, like how does that play into that weeks of rest?
Yeah, so the question was, in the 4 weeks of rest, is it okay if we do other things during that time? And how similar can they be? I might need an example about the similarities, just so we can kind of make sure that I understand. But in general, I would love for you to do something different during that time. Rest doesn't have to be sit at home and sit on the couch and do nothing. Rest actually needs to be doing other things. We know that we need like 60 plus minutes a day as a kid of exercise in order to be healthy. And so I want you to do other stuff. If you are normally a soccer player and training a couple of times a week and you've got this 1 month off during that time, go hike something, go mountain bike for a while, go play ultimate frisbee. Like, there's a million things that you can do that will help move your body. Spend time learning a little bit about weight training and things like that. I would love for you all to do something different during that time. That's what it's all about, is just allowing your body a break from those repetitive stresses so that you're off of the factory assembly line for a little while and you can heal. And then give me an example about the sport that you do most of the time, and then what we might be doing that's similar.
I coach jump rope mainly.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of gymnastics involved.
So cool.
Avoiding all gymnastics tricks and different, with diving and it's too similar to be a rest.
Gotcha. So the question was basically, we've got a jump rope coach, which seriously is so cool to me. That is really, really a cool sport. Would it be okay to do other types of gymnastic training during that time? Could we do some diving? Could we maybe do some different springboard floor, whatever? So essentially, if it's something that you do regularly with jump roping, if it's part of your regular training regimen with jump roping, we should probably take a break from that. So if, like on the springboard floor is part of your regular training routine, I am not very well educated in the sport of jump rope. I only get to see the competitions. I've never had an athlete that I've cared for with this. So I don't know if the spring floor is like potentially something that you could do during your off time, but we want it to be reasonably different than your normal. Okay, so maybe you could go to the tramp park or something like that, and you could work a little bit on the trampolines during that time. But if you're like, no, actually we do that too, then maybe we just need to pick something that's really different to take that break. Use that time to start learning about proper weightlifting form or things like that, because that will help build that explosive power that you'll need for all those different tricks. Does that make sense? Okay, what else?
I'm a head coach on our mountain bike team. My dad's on the team. I coach my dad. But anyway, we've got kids who like mountain biking is their identity.
Yes.
What they do. They ride a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And we've got kids who ride a lot less, and this is about all the active participation they have in any sport at all during the year. So we have a really wide variety. But those kids who are most invested in mountain biking, they're the ones who are hitting the podium every race.
Yeah.
They do ride a lot, but they don't just ride. They lift weights, they run track, they do other things as well. I want to talk a little bit, if you could just comment a little bit on what exactly the specialization means.
Yeah.
We've talked about it a lot, but just so I understand, our winners, our best performers are doing a lot of different things. Not just the mountain biking, but that is their identity. Like their identity, that's what they do the most of.
Mm-hmm.
So, how would you advise these athletes to stick to what they're doing or vary up what they're doing based on the concepts that we've discussed?
Totally. So it sounds like we've got a mountain biking head coach, And he's asking a little bit more about sort of his highest performers on the mountain biking team who are hitting the podium every time. They do cross-train a fair amount. They're doing some lifting, they're doing some running during these other times. How do we know if what they're doing, because they are pushing it really hard with mountain biking, is that considered sports specialization, and is it putting them at risk? So I think the big thing is it sounds like if they are spending time with other sports throughout the year, and maybe they're spending a day or maybe 2 days a week during those other sport times on their mountain bike, I would consider them not to be a full-on mountain biking sports specialist. If they are actually, competing and trying hard in another sport, I would not put them in a full-on sports specialist position, because they are, yes, they have their favorite thing. They live, eat, breathe mountain biking, but they're also doing this other thing that's actually helping them out over the long term. And so my hope is that when they're in cross-country season, that they're not on their bike in addition to that. If they're also on their bike during that time, so they're doing 5 days a week with cross-country training, and we're doing 5-6 days a week on the bike, that makes my hair stand on end a little bit, and I'm nervous. But if it's something to where during cross-country season, they may be riding their bikes like on the weekends or something like that, I love that. That's great. Yeah. We had a similar question in the last session that was like, I've got my mountain bikers who are doing heavy-duty mountain biking for like 4 or 5 months a year during that season. Do they need to take a month off during that time? The answer is no. They don't need to do that. But they're in the rest of the year. They do need to be off their hind ends and not doing nothing either. So, all right, what else? And it can be anything. I told the last group you get free access to a doctor right now. Let's hit it. Yeah.
Can I ask a question? Someone else said.
Yeah.
Sounds like you've been doing some education/advocacy with the soccer world related to your son. Can you give us any examples of effective habits that anything that's worked, anything that's convinced or exacted change in the club? Is this a club team?
This is a club team, a little comp team.
Something work, something not work?
Yeah.
It's a tough.
Oh, it's definitely a very tough problem. So I think just like we figured out with like most things in the world, if we want to enact change, the more voices that we have, the more voices that understand what's going on, the easier it is to create a little bit of momentum and to create a little bit of change. And so one thing that was really helpful for me as a parent is just being like, hey, like, this is something that I do all the time. And I noticed that this kid is actually playing on a couple of different teams right now. And so they're at kind of high risk for injuries. Do you mind if we like talk about that just a little bit? And most of the time, parents are very happy to like hear your understanding, hear your expertise. I just went to this conference and I learned that we need to have X amount of time off. So talking with them as a group, talking with parents, talking on the sidelines when you're, watching your kid for the 13th game that weekend. But trying to develop sort of a united front as then, like, if more of us understand that if we don't make changes, then our kids are going to have probably forced sideline time, and then going to the coach and talking about that. But I found that when I went to the coach to go talk to the coach by myself, that didn't have much of a result, even though this is like literally what feeds my family, is helping to teach people about this. The coach didn't really care. It was just one person on the team who was concerned. But when other people kind of understood the risks that come with things, when we approached the coach as a group, then it actually made some changes and we were able to make a little bit of headway. So I think one thing that will be important over the next 5 to 10 years, and that I hope I will have the opportunity to do a little bit, because now that I'm getting involved more and more with the climbing, with USA Climbing, and then with the youth climbing group, is being able to work from a national level. We've talked about how our coaches really set that model a lot of the times, and our parents have to, they will do whatever the coach says because they're the smart person who's going to be able to help their kid. One thing that I want to do kind of is start to have the national athletic associations talk about the fact that if we don't take breaks, it's worse for your kid. It's worse for your kid in terms of their ability to succeed later on, to continue loving the thing that they love, to actually allow them to make it to the next steps if they choose to continue to play on higher levels. But that's something that I hope I get to do soon. Yeah?
I hope you do that too. As you've been advocating as a parent, have you run into coaches' egos or where coaches feel like they're ganged up on by the parents? Any thoughts on navigating that?
Egos and sports go hand in hand. And so you make a really good point. And there was another sports med expert in the group on our last discussion, and he said it so beautifully. Sometimes we have to step up and be parents. And sometimes we have to figure out what's not safe for our kids, and we might have to change a team if true, we do butt up against those egos, or it's really not a healthy training environment for our kid, and we recognize that. And it is one of the hardest things you'll ever do, because you won't know if you're making the right decision because you're so worried. But as a parent, part of our job is to sort of pick through the stuff and figure out, oh man, all right, this actually is important, and the chances that my kid is going to be the next LeBron, probably not super high, but the chances that my kid is going to be an adult who loves to play X, Y, or Z, or maybe even, that the chance to participate in club or true NCAA sports in college, like that's a little bit higher. And so how can I help support him to be the right and best, not just athlete, but person? And so setting those examples as a parent is really hard, but can often be the exact right thing to do. It's going to take some bravery to do those things, but trying to find the right training gym, or the right coach for your kid, or the right, sometimes people even change high schools and things like that to get them in a safer place. But that is so hard. All right, I'm getting a thumbs up, meaning you're done. Okay. If there's anything else, please find me. I'm happy to talk with you guys about anything if you've got questions.